It's been kind of slow in relation to, gaming news and anything exciting happening. And and I don't know. I feel like a lot has happened over this past year, and we all know that in a couple of weeks or in about a month or so, the year is going to come to a close. And one of the things that people are looking forward to is the upcoming Sonic 3 movie. It's supposed to be coming out next month, I believe, right before Christmas. And I believe the release date is December 20th or somewhere around that time frame. And a lot of people, including myself, are really looking forward to that movie because the last two movies were awesome and they did really well in terms of box office revenue. And it seems like the Sonic franchise has been on a roll, especially considering the amount of mainstream attention that Sonic X Shadow Generations got when it was released back in October. And I think that game managed to reach at least 1 mil in terms of sales thus far. And that's actually pretty good because it feels like the gaming industry in general is in a slump because you have a lot of video game developers and companies, cutting staff. And I guess um, a lot of games in general are flopping, and the ones that do succeed are doing anywhere between like 1 to like 3 million. And for some reason, it doesn't seem like games seem to reach higher than 3 million in terms of sales or even higher than 4 million. I don't know why. Maybe it's lack of interest in gaming, and maybe it's just something where I guess the cost of gaming in general has gone up, and people have more important things to worry about, like how to make a living and all that. But yeah, Sonic the Hedgehog as a franchise is actually doing pretty good. But I recently read something online that I found rather interesting, and this is about the producer for Sonic X Shadow Generations. It turns out he wants to remake Sonic 2006, which came out for the PS3, and that was almost 20 years ago. And that's actually one of the worst Sonic games like ever made. Despite the fact that the visuals look pretty cool, just about everything else in relation to that game sucks. Just people I've asked about this game, they've had like nothing but bad things to say about it for the most part. They said it was a buggy mess. They said the storyline was too convoluted, included bestiality. You had characters like Silver and Elise that no one really cared about. And I think after Sonic 2006, no one really cared about Silver at all. He just became an afterthought for the most part. And I feel like if Sega is going to attempt to remake Sonic 2006, that would be like the equivalent of Capcom attempting to remake Resident Evil 5. The only difference is Resident Evil 5 was actually a good game. It's just that it's very controversial because of like the racism allegations and all that stuff. But Sonic 2006 was just bad. You know what I mean? It's not like it was a good game, but it was controversial or anything like that. So I feel like Sonic 2006 is a game that should be left alone. If the Sega staff are confident about, possibly being able to pull off remaking Sonic 2006 and turning it into somewhat of a decent game, that they should go for it. But it's something that, people never really ask for. No one really asks for a remake of Sonic 2006. And I feel like it's best like left in the past. And honestly, like Sonic the Hedgehog 2006 was a game that was so bad that after it was released in retail, like in '06, it actually got delisted in retailers like for the most part across America, like by 2010. And that's something I didn't know until the other day. And it was like, that's like, one of the worst like 3D games. And that's like just that's a few years shy after Sonic Adventure 2 from 2001. And that, in my opinion, to this day is like the best like 3D, Sonic game that I've ever seen or played or anything like that. But it seems like during the second half of the 2000s, um, there was a lot of like dumpster fire 3D Sonic games for the most part. And I feel like with Sonic the Hedgehog 2006, if they do, remake this game, I'm pretty sure they can, fix minor things that plague the game, like excessive load times, the camera angles being atrocious, the voice acting, being bad, the glitches, the controls. Those are all things that can, be fixed, and it would make Sonic 2006 a decent game. But trying to like rewrite the script and make it where it's appropriate to the audience they're trying to appeal to, I feel like that's something that's going to take extensive work. And I feel like it's something that could overall it can overall improve the quality of the game, but at the same time, it's going to make people think more about the original game and how bad it was when it came out back in the mid 2000s. But honestly, I do think that this is something that is very interesting, and with Shadow the Hedgehog, that game came out like a year before, like in 2005. The game, I think that game was kind of a dumpster fire as well because I felt like the game wasn't as fast as it should have been. It had that RPG element where Shadow got to choose his own fate, which was pretty cool. That was like one of the first major Sonic games we got that was like that. But I don't know. I felt like they tried to make Shadow look like even more of a badass than he actually was because Shadow, I mean, he didn't need a gun really because, he was already cool. He already had this, aura to him where, he was just like, cooler than Sonic, cooler than Knuckles. And it was just a matter of, I guess, putting him in a decent storyline where I guess it was believable and it made him feel like, he didn't have any allegiance to anyone. He could just kind of be his own person and what have you. Players shouldn't have had to have been able to choose, what side he was on. But but yeah, I feel like the reason why people are more invested in Shadow now is because of the Sonic X Shadow Generations game because they paired Sonic Generations with the Shadow the Hedgehog remake game. And I think that's one of the reasons why people kind of cared about it because Sonic Generations from 2011 was actually a pretty good game, and Shadow wasn't really a good game, but there was all kinds of stuff to added to make it look better, like aesthetics and gameplay changes and stuff like that that made the Shadow the Hedgehog game look better, and to make the plot for that game run parallel to that of Sonic Generations was pretty cool as well. So I think the way that game was pulled off was perfect for the most part. But I don't think they can, remake Sonic 2006 by itself and expect people to um, think any differently about it than how they thought almost 20 years ago. And I feel like it'd be one of those things where maybe they can appeal to casuals because I think it's a different audience of gamers nowadays because people during my generation remember that game and it's like, oh, it's horrible. But people from the generation after my generation, they can play this remake if Sega does a good job at pulling it off, and they can maybe be impressed by it. Who knows? But I do feel that that's something that would be interesting, and it's probably something that'd be saved for like 2026 if they decide to go for it, because 2026 will be the 20-year anniversary of Sonic the Hedgehog 2006.